The UK is one of our most significant trade partners. However, overall, despite unprecedented political stability, growing confidence in the economy and some serious changes for the better in our tax regime, we have failed to attract the expected rush of foreign investment from the West. We asked Janet Ford, Head of UK Trade and Investment of the British High Commission, how potential investors in the UK are viewing Sri Lanka's post-war prospects. Good to have you on the show, Janet. Welcome to Benchmark. How are the people of UK and also potential investors looking at Sri Lanka these days?
Positively, I believe. As you know, the UK was the second largest investor in Sri Lanka in 2009. We don't have the figures for 2010 yet, but after China, we were the single largest source of single country FDI into Sri Lanka. And I believe that confidence in Sri Lanka remains very strong from the UK side. And the economy is performing very well, as you know. So I see no reason why the UK should not continue to invest in Sri Lanka.
As for the reverse, how about Sri Lankan companies investing in the UK? Are you seeing a rise in the trends or are you seeing a decrease?
I think Sri Lanka is focusing a lot of its investment on Sri Lanka right now, which it should do as a developing market, rebuilding the economy after the conflict. So I don't see the trend going towards the UK as much. And I think the government is right to encourage Sri Lankans to invest in Sri Lanka right now. In time to come, Sri Lankan economy will be strong enough and individual investors will have an interest in investing in UK. I don't see that at the moment, although other countries certainly do invest in UK.
If we were looking at Sri Lankans wanting to invest in the UK, what are the areas you feel that there would be potential for investment?
Well, we're very keen to attract people who are looking at innovation and research and development, people who are looking to build on existing UK strengths. The UK is a world leader when it comes to new products and to research and to developing new products. You know, the iPod was developed in UK for an American company. World Wide Web developed by a Briton living in Switzerland. We are very much at the cutting edge of research and development, and we would be looking for Sri Lankans with an interest in investing in those new technologies, I think, very much so.
Even through the global economic crisis, the UK's economy did show some resilience. Now, in the current day context, how is the UK economy faring given that there's still a very slow recovery from the crisis, and also what's happening in the Middle East and Libya, one of the oil-rich countries in general?
The global slowdown of 2008, the credit crunch, some call it, woke us up to the fact that our economy was unbalanced. It was too heavily focused on financial services. It was too heavily reliant on credit. So our current government is very much keen on paying down the debt, reducing our reliance on credit and building up exports. 60% of our economic growth comes from export. So we are very much focused towards increasing exports, paying down the debt, and making the economy grow on a sustainable path. Doesn't mean high figure growth like you have in Sri Lanka. I mean, we're looking at very low figures, but we want it to be permanent, sustainable, and something that is going to last for a very long time.
What about the Japan crisis and the permeating effect it's having on the auto industry around the world?
Well, I think UK has been affected to the same extent as other countries. That we understand that Japan is facing some severe difficulties with production, and that it's going to be very difficult for it to retain the level of trade that it has until it can rebuild. Japan must prioritize its citizens and make sure that they are safe and secure.
But we're also seeing sovereign debt crises climbing up in most of the countries in the Eurozone, with Portugal and Ireland being the latest casualties. What about the impact, that cascading impact it's having on stronger economies like the UK?
Well, the obvious answer is that this is a huge benefit to us not being part of the Eurozone. that we can manage our economy pretty much ourselves, which we have done, and so we are not affected. We are supporting the bailout for Ireland and for Portugal and for Greece, but obviously in a way that is affordable for us, and so we are not affected to any great extent by those crises.
We take a quick break now for some messages from our sponsors. When we return, more insights from Janet Ford on bilateral trade. Stay tuned. Thanks for staying with us. You're watching the Big Picture Business program, and we continue with more views from Janet Ford. So, moving on to tourism, Janet, which is where most of our hopes lie these days, would it be right in saying that there is scope to improve the numbers of tourist arrivals coming in from the UK? You have been one of our primary markets, contributing to the tourism sector, but that is just not adequate. What can we do to entice your countrymen to come here?
In terms of enticing our countrymen, as you say, we are a major source country. We are the largest Western country, number of tourists that come here. And in terms of what we spend here, you know, we are second largest to India, only because there are more of them. But we certainly spend our money when we get here. And also, I think tourists from UK are more interested than any other group of tourists in exploring the real Sri Lanka beyond the beach resort. I mean, we go to the Cultural Triangle, we go to other places of interest, and we like the cultural uniqueness that Sri Lanka has to offer. And that is what, as educated and intelligent tourists, you would want. You know, you would want people to look beyond the obvious attractions, and there are many. Another area I think that the UK has found helpful, not only to establish the brand UK, we know what UK is, it's House of Parliament, it's changing the guard, it's tradition, but in UK we invested heavily in training and in hospitality and professionalising that area. It's traditionally been a low-paid, low-skilled area, and yet with tourists becoming more demanding of services, I think it will pay to upgrade the services offer. So if I was sitting in Sri Lanka wanting to offer more, I would look at my staff and how can I help my staff deliver the best service that they can. As I say, it's about professionalising things that have traditionally been seen as lower skill jobs, because they're very important jobs, because everyone working in the tourism industry is an ambassador for Sri Lanka. You know, it's very important to give the best impression of the country.
Thank you, Janet. That was a very valid point. What about sports tourism? You know, both our countries have such a passion for cricket. Maybe sports is another way to put our countrymen together.
I think that's a very good area, and I'm glad you highlighted it. And of course, with our Olympics next year, we're gearing up very strongly towards that, and inviting countries to come to UK to look at possible opportunities there for trade and for exchanges and for partnerships. And of course, you have your new facilities here, Hambantota, and looking to bid for the Commonwealth Games, which is quite a huge undertaking, and it's very it shows the confidence in Sri Lanka, I think, and I admire it immensely. But there's certainly areas where we can overlap, where we can share our experiences, and each contribute to the other in terms of what we deliver.
One of the first institutions that a potential investor comes across is the BOI. And in fact, for years we've been promised that the BOI will be restructured, but nothing happened. Last year's estimated $450 million of FDI inflows is the lowest under this government. In 2008, FDI has nearly reached $900 million. Now, how do you and others who have a special interest in our country view the BOI? Are we right in saying that unless something is done and it's transformed into a one-stop shop, it will continue being a white elephant?
I think the BOI has done a very good job, and I think that the government has recognised that maybe the time has come to change what it does, and that to focus it more on prioritising what's important for Sri Lanka. That it can't be the same offer for everyone that wants to come and open any size, any factory. Priority has to be given to those investors who are actually going to contribute to Sri Lanka and the Sri Lankan economy. So I think the government is making some wise decisions in how it uses the BOI. I think the BOI did the best job it could given the environment it had, but now times have changed and maybe it's time for a new framework and to establish new priorities in what sectors Sri Lanka wants to really sort of focus.
Do you think, Janet, that our work ethic, our excessive public holidays, we've just emerged from one whole week in April and we're going to another one in May, our labour laws and even the perception about corruption, do you feel that these weigh or these impact the minds of an investor as much?
I think there's probably a basket of issues that will be taken together. I don't think there's any one issue. For example, the work ethic, I think Sri Lanka is not the only South Asian country that sort of takes a lot of public holidays, you know. And it happens in many parts of the world. I don't think that's an issue. And similarly with corruption, Sri Lanka isn't the only country in the world that suffers from this kind of perception. So I think it needs to be taken together and all of these issues addressed as a kind of a sort of a checklist. You know, what are we doing on this? What are we doing on that? What are we doing on the other thing? And that sense of taking combined action will give confidence to investors.
And that concludes our interview with Janet Ford. It's time now for a commercial break. On the other side, we ask economist and LMD columnist Samantha Amarasinghe whether the Central Bank of Sri Lanka should shift into policy tightening gear as inflation slides up. Stay with us.